The termination letter said performance issues. I read it 3 times standing in the parking lot, hands shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of rage that makes everything go completely quiet. I had the highest review scores on my team for 4 straight years. Patrick knew that. HR knew that. And in that moment, holding that letter, I knew exactly what this really was. And I knew I wasn't going quietly. The thing about Veltrix Solutions is that from the outside, it looked like the kind of place you'd actually want to build a career. Glass offices in downtown Chicago, quarterly bonuses, a rooftop lounge that HR loved to show off in recruitment videos. And for a long time, I genuinely believed I had made it. My name is Brandon Ellis. I was 34, senior data analyst. 5 years deep into a company I had poured everything into. I wasn't just doing my job, I was exceeding it. Every quarter, my analytics reports were the ones leadership quoted in board meetings. Every restructuring, my department survived because the numbers I produced were too valuable to cut. I had built something real there. Patrick Dunn was my direct manager, VP of Operations, 52 years old, silver-haired, the kind of guy who remembered everyone's coffee order and made you feel like the most important person in the room. Leadership loved him. Clients loved him. New hires thought he was a mentor. I used to think that too. For the first 3 years, Patrick was genuinely good to work with. Direct feedback, fair credit distribution, no obvious games. I recommended him to 2 friends who later joined the company. That detail still makes my stomach turn. The shift started small. A lingering hand on the shoulder after a presentation. A late-night Slack message asking if I wanted to debrief over drinks. Invitations that felt less professional and more personal. I told myself I was misreading it. Corporate culture can feel weird sometimes. People have different boundaries. But then the messages got more direct, and I stopped telling myself anything. I kept things professional. I distanced myself gradually. Shorter replies, always keeping meetings in group settings, never staying late alone. For a while it seemed to work. I had no idea the clock was already ticking. It happened on a Tuesday night in October. The office was empty except for us. I was finalizing a Q3 report that Patrick had pushed to a next morning deadline, something he had been doing increasingly often, manufacturing reasons for us to be alone after hours. He came and stood behind my chair. Too close. I could smell his cologne. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You know, Brandon, I've been thinking about us working so closely together. I think we have something worth exploring beyond this office." I closed my laptop. I stood up. I kept my voice completely level. "Patrick, I respect our working relationship, but I'm not interested in anything beyond that. I'd like to keep things professional." He smiled, not warmly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. He said, "Of course, my mistake," and he walked out. That was the last normal day of my career at Veltrix. Within a week, the reassignment started. The Hendrix account, my project for 8 months, quietly moved to a junior analyst named Ryan, who happened to be Patrick's newest hire. No explanation, no meeting, just a calendar update and a CC removal from email chains. I requested a one-on-one with Patrick. He was suddenly too busy, always in meetings. Responses became one line, sometimes nothing at all. Then came the whisper campaign. I first noticed it when a colleague named James stopped inviting me to the informal lunch group. Small thing. But then I ran into him near the elevators and he got awkward, almost apologetic, and said, "Hey man, I heard you've been going through some stuff. Patrick mentioned you've been under a lot of pressure lately." My blood went cold. Patrick had been talking. Not loudly, not obviously, just enough. Quiet, concerned-sounding words dropped in the right ears. "Brandon's been struggling. I'm worried about his focus. He's not really himself lately. He wasn't attacking me. He was erasing me." Slowly, professionally, with a smile. I went home that night and sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes. Just sat there. Engine off, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. The worst part wasn't the anger. The worst part was the doubt. Had I misread the situation that night? Had I been too cold in my rejection? Was I being paranoid about the reassignments? Maybe the Hendricks account really was a workload decision. Maybe James was just being awkward because he's always been awkward. My brain was working overtime trying to find an innocent explanation for everything because the alternative, that my manager was systematically dismantling my career over one rejected advance, felt too calculated to be real. But then my performance review landed in my inbox. I had to read it twice, then a third time. Needs improvement. Across almost every category. Collaboration, output quality, initiative. The same categories where 12 months ago I had received exceeds expectations across the board. No specific incidents cited, no documented warnings, no prior conversations flagging any concerns. Just a sudden, clean reversal of 5 years of consistent excellence. My hands were shaking again, different from the parking lot. This was quieter, more dangerous. I stopped sleeping properly. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., running through conversations in my head, trying to identify what I could have done differently. My appetite dropped. I started over-preparing for every meeting, terrified of giving Patrick anything legitimate to point at. That's when Nina Vasquez stopped me in the break room. Nina was a project coordinator. Quiet, sharp, had been at Veltrix almost 7 years. She looked at me for a moment like she was making a decision. Then she said very quietly, "I know what's happening to you. It happened to me, 2 years ago. I just want you to know, you're not imagining it." She walked out before I could respond. That one sentence cracked something open in me. The self-doubt didn't disappear, but underneath it, something harder and colder started forming. That weekend I opened a fresh Google Doc on my personal laptop. Not my work machine. Never my work machine. I titled it simply, Record. And I started writing everything down. Every date, every interaction, every reassignment, every one-line response, every second-hand comment that reached me through colleagues. Every single detail I could remember, time-stamped and specific. It wasn't revenge yet. It was survival. I went back through my work email and screenshot every performance-related communication from the past 8 months. The praise from client presentations, the great work Brandon replies from Patrick himself, the quarterly summaries where my numbers were highlighted in leadership decks. I forwarded everything to my personal email in small batches, nothing that would trigger an IT flag. Then I called my college friend Raymond Park. Raymond was an employment attorney in the city. We hadn't spoken in 4 months. He picked up on the second ring. I didn't give him the full story over the phone. I just said, "I think my manager has been retaliating against me professionally after I rejected a personal advance. I have documentation. I need to know what I'm looking at legally." Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Don't delete anything. Don't confront anyone. Don't tell anyone at work. Come see me Thursday." I followed every instruction exactly. Meanwhile, I reached back out to Nina. Carefully, not over work channels. I texted her personal number, which she had given me months ago for a project coordination reason. I kept it simple. "I'd like to talk. Off the record, whenever you're comfortable." She replied 3 hours later, one word, Saturday. We met at a coffee shop 12 blocks from the office. Nina told me everything. The same pattern 2 years earlier. The closeness, the advance, the rejection, the sudden performance concerns, the whisper campaign. She had left quietly, convinced no one would believe her. Then I showed her something that changed the entire situation. While building my document, I had searched my archived project emails and found a thread from 3 years ago, before my time on Patrick's direct team. An employee named Curtis Webb had been terminated for attitude and performance concerns. The email chain showed Patrick personally drafting the justification language. The timeline matched perfectly. Advance, rejection, erasure, termination. Nina stared at the screen for a long moment. "He's done this before," she said. "At least twice that I can prove," I replied. Monday morning, I walked into Veltrix like nothing had changed. Suit pressed, coffee in hand, calm face. Inside, I was a coiled wire. Raymond had given me clear direction, let the situation play out naturally while the documentation built itself. Don't accelerate, Don't confront. Just watch and record. The termination came 11 days later. Patrick's assistant called me into a conference room at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. HR representative named Donna was already seated. A printed letter was face down on the table. They didn't waste time. We're restructuring the analytics division. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. We wish you well. 4 minutes. That's how long it took to end 5 years. I nodded. I signed the acknowledgement form, not the severance agreement, which Raymond had specifically told me to take home and not sign under any pressure. Donna looked uncomfortable when I folded it into my jacket pocket. Patrick wasn't even in the room. Of course he wasn't. Security walked me to my desk. I took my coffee mug and a small framed photo. Everything else I left. I had already taken everything that mattered weeks ago. But here is where everything changed. As the security guard was walking me toward the elevator, I passed Ryan's desk, the junior analyst who had taken the Hendricks account from me. And I saw something that stopped me cold. On his monitor, half visible, was an org chart. My name had already been removed. Ryan's name was already in my box. That org chart had a date stamp in the corner. It was created 6 weeks ago. I took a photo of his screen as I walked past, casual, like I was checking my phone. Raymond's reaction when I sent him that photo was the first time I had heard him genuinely rattled. "Brandon, this isn't just retaliation. This is premeditated termination. He was building your replacement before he even manufactured the performance issues. That changes everything." Nina called me that same evening. She had been doing her own quiet digging. She had found 2 other former employees through LinkedIn. Both had left Veltrix within the past 4 years, under sudden restructuring circumstances. Both were willing to talk. Patrick Dunn didn't just have a pattern. He had a system. Raymond filed the EEOC complaint on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, Veltrix's legal team had already called him twice. The complaint was detailed, documented, and airtight. Premeditated termination evidence, a falsified performance review timeline, a pattern of behavior spanning multiple employees. Nina's corroborating account attached as a formal supporting statement. 2 additional former employees. Both had agreed to provide written testimonials once they understood the strength of the overall case. Veltrix's lawyers tried the standard opening move. "Let's discuss a quiet resolution." Raymond's response was equally direct. "My client isn't interested in quiet." Meanwhile, the internal investigation that Veltrix's own board demanded, separate from the legal proceedings, started pulling threads Patrick had assumed were buried forever. What they found unraveled him completely. HR had received an anonymous complaint about Patrick 18 months ago. Vague, unspecific, but documented. Instead of investigating, the HR director at the time had flagged it to senior leadership and been told to monitor the situation. That complaint had been quietly filed away. The HR director who buried it had since been promoted. Then investigators pulled Patrick's full history of performance reviews across his entire team over 6 years. The pattern was undeniable. Employees who had close personal interactions with Patrick, followed by sudden professional distance, consistently received downgraded reviews within 1 to 2 quarters. No performance improvement plans, no documented warnings, just clean reversals that HR had rubber-stamped without question. Patrick was placed on administrative leave on a Tuesday. He was terminated the following Monday. The official statement from Veltrix said, "Separation by mutual agreement." Everyone inside the company knew exactly what it meant. 3 weeks later, Veltrix's legal team returned to Raymond with a settlement offer. Significant compensation, full expungement of Brandon's employment record, a formal written acknowledgement, not public, but legally binding, that the termination had been retaliatory and without legitimate performance basis. Raymond called me with the number. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee, completely calm. "Take it," I said. Not because I was tired, not because I was afraid of a long legal fight, but because I had already won everything that actually mattered. My name was clean, Patrick was gone, and Nina, for the first time in 2 years, finally exhaled. 3 months after that termination letter, I started at Meridian Analytics Group, senior strategy analyst, 15% higher base salary, A manager who sent me a welcome email before my first day asking what I needed to hit the ground running. I sat at my new desk on day one and felt something I hadn't felt in almost a year. Just quiet. Good quiet. The transition wasn't seamless. There's a particular kind of damage that workplace betrayal does that doesn't disappear with a settlement check or a new job title. For weeks after everything resolved, I still woke up at 3 a.m. with my jaw clenched. Still caught myself over-explaining in meetings, bracing for a cold response that never came. Trauma doesn't file itself away as neatly as legal documents do. But slowly, it lifted. Nina landed a senior coordinator role at a nonprofit she had been quietly admiring for years. She texted me on her first day. Just 3 words. I can breathe. I stared at that message for a long time. Raymond told me later that the 2 additional former employees who had come forward both received private settlements of their own after Veltrix's internal investigation concluded. Their stories never became public, but they were finally acknowledged, documented, believed. That mattered more than anything. Here is what I know now that I didn't fully understand when I was sitting in that parking garage staring at a concrete wall. Patrick Dunn wasn't uniquely powerful. He was just counting on silence. He had built an entire system around the assumption that people would doubt themselves long enough for him to finish the job. That shame and confusion and professional fear would do his work for him. And for years, with Nina, with Curtis, with others, it had. The moment that stopped working was the moment I stopped trying to find an innocent explanation for what was clearly deliberate. Documentation wasn't just my legal strategy. It was the act of trusting myself, of saying, out loud, to a blank document at midnight, this is real, this is happening, and I refuse to pretend otherwise. If you are watching this right now, and something in this story felt uncomfortably familiar, a manager who shifted after a rejection, a performance review that made no sense, colleagues who suddenly went cold, a quiet voice in your head saying, maybe I'm imagining it. I need you to hear this clearly. You are not imagining it. The most dangerous thing workplace predators rely on is not their own power. It is your self-doubt. They are deliberately, strategically cultivating that doubt because it is their only real weapon. The moment you start documenting, the moment you make one phone call to one attorney, the moment you say out loud, this is retaliation, their entire system starts collapsing. So here is what I want you to walk away with tonight. Document everything. Dates, times, exact words, witnesses. Forward relevant emails to your personal account in small batches. Screenshot what you can. Write down conversations the same day they happen while details are fresh. Build your record quietly, consistently, without tipping your hand. Do not confront. Do not threaten. Do not warn. Let them keep moving while you keep building. The rope they are using to hang you, let them keep pulling it. Find one person you trust outside the company. An attorney, a mentor, a trusted friend with relevant experience. You do not have to fight this alone, and you do not have to figure out the legal landscape by yourself. One phone call changes everything. And find your Nina. Because somewhere in your orbit there is someone else who went through something similar and stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them. Your courage becomes their permission. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Patrick Dunn thought he was ending my career. What he actually did was show me exactly how strong I was when everything was stripped away, and the only thing left was the choice to stay quiet or stand up. I chose to stand up, and I would make that same choice 1,000 times over. If this story hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because there are more stories coming that you do not want to miss. You deserve a workplace where your talent is the only thing that determines your future. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.